Welcome to the Back on Track Achieving Healthy Weight Loss podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shelly. Have you ever wondered why you do the things you do, especially when it comes to healthy behaviors? I know myself, I don't know what it is about me. When I go into the grocery store, I have to go straight to the vegetable line instead of going to the other parts. And I'm like walking around in a circle. Like, there's so many things that we do that are impacted by our beliefs, our values, and our experiences. And today we're going to discuss why you need to be more conscious about it and how our beliefs, our values, and our experiences impact our present behavior. And today I have the expert, Dr. Maisha Claiborne, who is a physician, thought leader, consultant, and trauma-informed communication trainer. She is the founder of Mind Remapping Company, a co, where she focuses on psychological safety in healthcare and corporate environment. She teaches her audiences that by mastering their communication and thought habits, they can mitigate harm and create psychological safety by becoming responsible for the impact of their words, and behavior. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Claiborne. We're so happy to have you today.
Thank you, Dr. Shelly. It is so good to be here. It's so good to be here. I'm very excited to have this conversation.
Yes. Well, before we get started, please tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you get into this space?
Well, first of all, I'll say my favorite job in the world is that of mommy. I have a 9-year-old and a 9-year-old boy, and he's why I do the work that I do. And yeah, it's just to be able to create a safer world, a better world for him and his friends and my nieces and nephews. And so that's the foundation of why I transitioned. I am a physician by training, and I've always sort of been fascinated with human behavior and the mind, why we do the things we do. And perhaps it is a product of my upbringing. I grew up in a home where there was trauma. And I often ask, like, why is this happening? So it led to a psychology degree. And because I love the body, I was like, well, I think I want to go to medical school. But I always was just really fascinated with the root cause of behavior. And that led me throughout my career to really trailblaze and swim upstream, as I used to say. And so that's how I got into this work of psychological safety. I think it was kind of full circle work when I stepped out of clinical medicine and eventually stepped into activism. I'm still very connected and concerned with the root cause, but more at the societal level, at the organizational level, and really bringing human behavior into the work of systemic equity and inclusion. Because if you think about it, guess who runs the systems? People. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to people, our beliefs, our values, our inherited conversations, things that we inherit growing up. It all comes down to humanity.
I love that. And you're right. It definitely all comes down to humanity and why we do the things we do, which is pretty impressive here. Now, what are some beliefs and values that people have that like, what are something that kind of play that role with why people do what they do?
Yeah. One of the things, being an integrative medicine physician, when I was in clinical medicine, I was very focused on lifestyle. I was very focused on food as medicine and movement. And one of the things that is so pervasive is that being healthy is hard. I don't know where that belief comes from in our culture, but there is a belief that pervades our culture. That is healthy. Being healthy is hard. And I think in some ways the system sort of is set up in certain areas to make it hard and make it more expensive. However, when we don't question those beliefs, like, well, what would make it easy? That's the question. Well, what would make it easy? Then we begin to actually settle into those beliefs. And then the mind by nature, it takes the path of least resistance. So if it's too hard to eat, if it's too hard to be healthy, well, I guess I'm just going to do what's easy and not be so healthy,
that suits. And I know personally, sometimes I have to kind of reshape my mind, my thoughts, because in my mind, I'm like, I don't have time to cook. I don't have time to meal prep. But then I'm like, well, you have 10 minutes. You have, like, how long is it going to take you? You just sit here for a second, put your timer on and meal prep, you know? Yeah. And maybe for me, it's just kind of the stuff that will move the needle are the hardest thing mentally for me to grab. To go forward.
You know, I think that sometimes people have an internal image in their mind of what healthy eating is supposed to look like, or what exercise is supposed to look like. And admittedly, I did too. Like, you know, they depict these commercials with exercise being, you got to be on your Peloton, or you got to be in the gym in a big classroom doing your step aerobics, or you got to be lifting and pumping iron, you know. And what they don't depict is, like, there are 15-minute HIIT workouts. And for those of you who don't know what HIIT is, high intensity interval training, 10-minute workouts on YouTube. So if you have a phone or an iPad or computer with internet access, then you can just pull up your YouTube and look up HIIT beginner.
Yes. I remember one time I did the whole, I think it was the beach body with the gentleman, and I died. I'm like, if the people on the video are dying, I had no chance.
Exactly. Sure. Beginner. Always put that beginner, because, you know, then they'll make modifications for those who may be at the beginning of their journey, or even intermediate. Sometimes even as an intermediate, I'll pull up beginner stuff, because I don't know what these people are out there doing. They're like, you know, pro athlete level trainers over here trying to get you to put your foot on the ceiling. And so, you know, there are a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, like dancing. I used to tell patients, do you like to dance? Just turn on the music for 15 minutes and just dance like nobody's watching. You don't have to be able to dance. Just move your body, you know? And so when you have this concept of what thing is supposed to look like, you know, that healthy eating means you have to eat a salad all day, every day. No. The question is, how do you make it easier? How do you do the healthy things in a way that tastes good, or that is fun, right? If you're not a cook, hey, okay, now, look, we're so spoiled. We have food delivery services, meal prep services. Yeah. You know, they've got all kinds of things and you can even choose healthy things off the menu of your local, you know, there are like healthy fast food restaurants now. You go to Panera. I don't know where people are, if there's a Panera everywhere, but there's like these restaurants that they have good, healthy food. So it's just about questioning that belief and saying, is that really true? How can I expand that?
So what are some strategies that people can use in order to kind of question? Like, how can they, like, you know, how do you recognize, number one, that you may be having a limiting belief? And then number two, how do you transition in your mind about it?
Well, you know, one of the ways that you could recognize that a belief is limiting is about how it makes you feel in your body, right? So a lot of times we forget to recognize these sensations that are happening in our body. And if you're wanting to do something, but you have an inner voice telling you something, and it gives you kind of an ick feeling, you might feel it in your throat, you might feel it in your chest, you might feel it in sort of like your gut, your solar plexus, you might even feel it in your head. But if it doesn't make you feel good, then you might think, well, is that really true? And you might even ask, well, are there resources? Are there people that know how to do what it is that I want to do? But when it makes you feel bad, that's the point to question. Where did I pick this up? Is this belief true? And if it does feel really true, could it not be true? What if it weren't true?
What if it weren't true?
Exactly. So I think that's one way. I think the other way is if you recognize it as a repeating negative voice in your head, it's probably a limiting belief. All right. So, you know, the two are connected. It's probably going to make you feel bad. But if it's a repeated negative voice in your head, it's probably limiting belief. And also, if you hear if you're talking to people and they're giving you ideas and you hear yourself saying, yeah, but.
That's a good one. Yeah, but.
yeah, but, then it's probably a limiting belief, right? There's probably a limiting belief. Anytime I hear the words, yeah, but, then I think, well, that's a limiting belief coming right behind that.
That's true. I love that. So if you feel icky feeling, it definitely shows that it's a limiting belief because it make you feel good. And then you said repeating voices in your head, or yeah, but, or all sign.
Exactly.
How do you overcome that limiting belief?
Well, they say in the 12-step programs, awareness is the first step to recovery.
That's true. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So the awareness really is a huge step. You recognize that the belief is there. And then, sometimes there are things when you start to recognize it, you can't unrecognize it. But then what do you do with that? Well, you seek out resources of how do you shift that limiting belief. I said earlier, you might ask, what else could be true? What could be true? How could this be wrong? And what resources could I access that might actually prove me wrong, right? The other thing to overcome that limiting belief is to really ask yourself, when did I first think that? When is the first time I ever had that voice in my head? What was going on at that time? What were the circumstances? And are the circumstances still the same, or are they different? Like, what about the circumstances different? Like, maybe you picked up this belief as a child or as a young person with less resources than you have now, right? And then now you may have different resources, either different internal, more knowledge, different friends. There are more things in the world you can access. So it renders that belief invalid now, and you can choose a new belief.
I like that. So the first thing you said is awareness.
And could be true.
And then what resources are available, and then reminding yourself, when did I first start thinking about this thought, this limiting belief? What the circumstances surrounding?
Yeah. And because when you think about that, when did I first have that belief? When did that belief first come into being? What was happening around that? What were the circumstances? Then you might find, do I have resources now that I didn't have then, that I can now be empowered to change that belief and change the behavior around it? What do I know now that I didn't know then when I acquired that belief? And recognizing the belief is no longer serving me. So then what can I choose to believe instead?
And then actually accepting.
That's right.
So these are really great steps on how we can take kind of that awareness, just so that we make sure the audience gets it. Could you maybe give us an example of somebody utilizing this step, just so that make sure they got all of the different stuff?
Absolutely. So I used to coach women in medicine around career transition specifically, right? And so always there would be this belief, I can't have the job that I want. I can't have the job that I want. So in working with these docs, I would discover when was the first time that they had that belief. And generally speaking, it was something that came up around training, a belief that was infused during our conditioning. And when we saw the source of that belief, and I showed them, look at all these people that have found their ideal careers. And then we look, and you have me as a resource, you have community as a resource. Let's look at how this belief is untrue, and let's do the work to be able to prove that that belief is wrong and put the structures in place. And then these people found that they could have a meaningful career or meaningful job that they actually loved. I'll give another example that's closer to the more of the eating and the nutrition range. When I was working this is years ago, I used to work part-time at Kaiser, and I would see these patients that come in. I saw this guy that came in, and he was with his wife, and in his chart was, hypertension, uncontrolled, hasn't changed diet. So I asked him, sir, why is it that you have not, you know that your diet is a contributor to your blood pressure being uncontrolled. What is stopping you from shifting your diet? And so he said to me the thing that most people say, I've tried so hard to eat healthy, but it is just so boring. I can only eat so much salad. So I said, what if I could show you how to eat healthy, how to make the things that you like taste good? And his eyebrows raised and his wife leaned in. And she said, I would certainly cook whatever you're suggesting. So we went through this process of talking about the different places to find how to make their recipes healthier, the substitutions that would be needed. I gave them some resources and I asked them, are you willing to try it? And they're like, absolutely. And the next month they came back, his blood pressure was down and he was so excited about how healthy he had been eating. And his wife came in and she was like, yeah, Doc, look, I made this recipe. She brought, the papers of the recipes that she had been cooking. And it's all because they were willing to believe something different and recognize that, there are resources. I gave them the resources. There were resources around them, but that's something that's a conversation that hadn't been had in the past. So that's an example where belief changed, which changed the actions, which gave a different result.
These are great examples. Thank you so much. I love it. Well, any last minute advice you have for the audience as they're trying to change their limiting beliefs?
Yes. Well, we talked about the tips, but what I want to leave you with is, if in fact you're working really hard to change your beliefs and you find like you're having trouble doing it, sometimes you might have a blind spot and you may need to work with someone. So if that's the case, don't be ashamed to reach out for help, because there are lots of people, even like yourself, right, that do this work. This is why you have this podcast. And so it's important to reach out to those people who may have a view that you don't have and be able to see into those blind spots to help you to tackle those limiting beliefs and to be able to reset so that you can choose a new belief, a new behavior, and move on to a new result.
Oh, perfect. Well, how can somebody reach out to you and want to work with you at all?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. If you are interested, now the work that I do one-on-one with people is really subconscious mind work. I help the people who are, when you have these, the beliefs that are under the surface that maybe you don't even realize you have, those are the things that I bring forth. And I do that through hypnotherapy, and I do that through neuro-linguistic programming. And so even if you're working with someone, I often partner with other coaches and therapists, and you just can't quite get to the root of it. That's when you would reach out to someone like me. And you can learn more about that, the way that I work with people, at mindremappingacademy.com. That's mindremappingacademy.com.
Excellent. And that will be in the show notes. So thank you so very much, Dr. Claiborne, for just coming and just sharing all your knowledge. This is perfect. And thank you all for joining us today on another episode of the Back on Track Achieving Healthy Weight Loss podcast. If you like this episode, please share with others, like it, and subscribe. And don't forget to leave a 5-star review. All right, we'll see you back next time.